lately the world has been in all this crisis over essentially the proxy war between NATO and Russia over what's going on in Ukraine, uh, and there's a lot of mixed signals. Some countries are trying to get them to negotiate peace, and other countries are trying to egg it on. And the I remember when I was in Ukraine in 2014, back when all this problem was really starting, and my Ukrainian friends were basically telling me that a bunch of EU bankers, they thought they were maybe Germans, were basically handing out money to get people to go riot and protest, and we know that there was some American influence to make all that happen also. And and my friends took the money and then they went home and ordered pizza, because Germans giving out free money. I mean, who's going to say no to that? But um, what's the take on all of this stuff that's going on? I don't uh, because Germany seems to have a very complicated relationship with Russia.
Yeah. I mean, you have Western media, and any place where Western media is followed a lot, it just leads to a lot of virtue signaling. Russia bad. Oh yeah, Russia bad. And that's kind of it's like this soundtrack of people not really thinking what they're saying through. They're just repeating, which is good and bad. And but then you have the real decision makers in Germany, and a lot of them they're kind of stuck in an interesting position because there's a lot of Russian money in Germany. A lot of the politicians, especially older ones, are really buddy buddy with Germany. And wait, well, the German politicians are buddy buddy with Russia.
Right.
They're also buddy buddy with America because that's an important trade partner. Um, you have, for example, one thing that happened recently. One of the former chancellors, Reuter, he was, if you're an ex-chancellor, you have special rights. You serve in an advisory position to the government. You have your office in Berlin somewhere. You have protection, and you get paid to a certain extent, which I didn't know about this before. But this same person, who's an ex-chancellor, so he's free to do work, I think he was on the board or some gas board, maybe Gazprom. And so then in the end, I think they took away his money that he gets paid for being the ex-chancellor because now it's a conflicting role.
Right.
But things go really far. One of the biggest soccer teams had the little G from Gazprom as part of the logo. Schalke, that's the little G behind it. That's
Yeah.
Gazprom. So they're really, they had a lot of really tight Russian connections, and the Russians had no problem taking care of the politicians and giving them nice trips to Russia, paying them, and God knows what they all gave them. We'll probably not find out, but they can't be too Russian friendly because America doesn't like that, and America has more money than Russia. So it's kind of caught in the middle. It's interesting.
Um. So, because we know that there's a lot of kerfluffle over the Nord Stream pipelines, and now Russia's starting to shift its focus eastward. They're going to start providing resources more to China, and I think they're going to largely abandon their European interests because it's probably just not worth the trouble to them. And what's going to happen with the relationship between Germany and Russia? Because the two countries, at least from what I observed, as a I've got no skin in the game. I live in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, right now. But as an impartial American, uh, it seems to me that Germany and Russia were becoming pretty buddy buddy after the Cold War ended, and there had been, I guess, on and off throughout history, Germany and Russia had been, on friendly terms other times throughout history. So what's going to happen now? Is Russia going to pull away from Germany? Is Germany going to pull away from Russia? Are they going to sort of pretend to not like each other and then do backroom deals? What do you think is going to happen with all that?
I think number one, times are changing. You know, a lot of how this started was in the 90s when Germany reunited because East Germany was kind of Russia,
Yeah.
you know, and most of those people are really tight with Russia. And a lot of them stayed, and a lot of them are still part of the new reunited government. And that's kind of how that was born. That's not the case so much anymore. These old people are retiring. The guy mentioned, well, he's the ex-chancellor. He hasn't been chancellor for years. Merkel succeeded that guy, I think. Um, and so it's kind of moving in a more unrelated way from that specific part of history. On the other hand, politicians like to make money. They don't really care where it comes from. Look at the UEFA. I just that's a NGO, but whatever. They're all politicians. I can't stand them. And the World Cup is being held in Doha, and because it's too hot in the summer, they've decided to reschedule it to November. So it's happening in November, and mysteriously, all the UEFA people got paid millions for that. They all got taken care of, and what a surprise that is. And now Germany's rescheduling their regular league, happens in the fall. I think there's like a pause now that's been put in the schedule for when the World Cup is happening to facilitate the fact that the players play for both teams. What was the point of that? That's they want their money, and that's where the buck stops. They have to make their money. They're in charge. They'll stop at nothing to get it, and Germany is going to look for partners that can pay them. So if I had to guess, if you had to pick, if Russia didn't work out for Germany, I think they would start making friends with China. They probably have, and I think they would look for income there. They just it's kind of a selfish thing, I think, at the end of the day. I think a lot of it is really controlled by the individual lives of the people making the decisions.
Now, are other because like right now in America, if you look at American politics, it seems to be very ideologically driven. You've got your globalists trying to do their great reset thing. You've got certainly a lot of Chinese money pouring into American politics. Uh, and it doesn't really seem to matter, on a broad scale, whether they're Republican or Democrat. It doesn't really. There's a reason they call it the Uniparty, and they don't seem to, but they seem to be very ideologically driven by their future vision of the world. And I think this causes them to make a lot of mistakes. Uh, is Germany, with them being just focused on the money, and I think the American politicians are getting rich in the process. Are the German politicians more pragmatic, or are they also ideologically driven? Because when you think of because like wasn't isn't like Klaus Schwab, Germany, the Brussels seems to have a lot of German influence.
Yeah,
Is Germany at the heart of the globalists? Like one of the jokes, uh, one of the jokes that a friend of mine was telling me was that the EU is really just Germany trying to take over Europe the peaceful way.
I don't think that's very accurate. Um, Germany isn't coordinated or smart enough to do anything like that. And I think the EU is just Team EU. A lot of Germans, like von der Leyen, is German. He's pretty much in charge of that racket. Um, I think the EU is ideological. I think the EU wants to take over the world or not take, go and control the masses and that sort of thing. Germany, on the individual level, I don't think is that far down that path. I don't think they're even close to as far being in that direction as the EU is. I think the EU takes that a lot further.
So there's
Uh,
a lot of daylight between Germans and between the German government and the EU, is what you're saying.
yeah, it's not entirely too closely related. Um, that's there's so many problems within Germany that don't relate to the EU that there's really just more focus in the case of within Germany with lobbying a lot more money on solving Germany's issues, and kind of letting the EU simmer on the back burner until they cause a problem big enough for people to care about avoiding it.
So does the EU survive? So because it really almost seems from what you're saying then that a lot of the conflict between the West and Russia seems to be EU driven, perhaps, or NATO driven.
There's
Uh,
just inherent disagreements, especially in the EU, because it's just big enough that you cannot have one vision or one answer. You know, if Western Europe says something um, about this conflict, usually Eastern Europe isn't going to like it because it affects them. Hungary is a great example.
Yeah.
Um, and hey, just there's always going to be conflict, and then they're going to want to kind of make Team EU relevant and take over the world and matter, because otherwise Brussels is out of a job. Otherwise, they realize that they don't actually matter, or not nearly as much as they thought they did.
So what you're saying is that the EU may not be nearly as important as they're trying to tell us that they are.
Right. Because it's not NATO. That's a separate agency. And that's kind of the important part here. It's an entirely separate agency, and they're trying to make it their business when, yeah, it is a little bit, but
Because
it,
hasn't the EU been talking about trying to form an EU military?
yeah, and the same way the UN has their UN troops from different countries and this and that, everybody's trying to be important, and that's I think that's a big topic too.
And
A
but
lot,
realistically, all that would be secondary compared to NATO, I suppose.
yeah, because NATO actually matters a lot. It's kind of like corporate America. Everybody, there's like this inflation of people that know how to do smart things. The amount of white collar people is exploding around the whole world. And so you need to create jobs for them to do. A lot of the jobs that people do in corporate America don't matter. Or they do now and like they're necessary, but it's not actually productive in society. You know what I'm trying to say? Like the EU is trying to do things that maybe they're necessary now due to the situations they've started, but in real life, in terms of like you wake up, go to the store to get your food, do your job, go home and sleep. Like in the actual life that matters to the physical person, the EU is kind of irrelevant.
Right. Well, Dad says that you could probably get rid of 90% of the world's bureaucrats, and you'd see nothing but improvement in the world.
Oh yeah, yeah,
So,
without a doubt.
so, so, do you think does the EU survive as an entity, or are they going to prosper? Are they gonna weaken? What do you think's going to happen with that?
EU survives because it's how countries approach each other. It's kind of the network, and everybody thinks it's good. The EU survives because all the countries that cause problems for the EU are going to fight to stay in it and to keep it relevant because they're taking money from countries that produce money, like Germany and France.
Is
Um,
the EU a net benefit for Germany, or is it a burden?
for any country that is able to be productive in society, being in the EU is a burden to them. The currency thing is nice, but then again, not really. It's nice that you don't have to change your money and deal with international trade issues and all of that, but you'd be a lot better off doing your own thing. Um, Meanwhile, if you have a lot of debt and your country's just going down deep in the red, it's very nice when that you pay some of your bills.
Do you think Do you think a lot of these countries are going to drag Germany down? Because Germany's basically the bank of the EU, right? Germany and France.
Yeah, to a point. To a point. I mean, there's no answer to anything. It's subjective, because you have to look at the other argument. Switzerland is not part of the EU. They have the Swiss franc. They're independent, but they're kind of more inflated than the EU is. That's one thing. Sure, Germany's bleeding money and they're paying it to Greece and Italy and all their friends and this and that. Well, on the other hand, Germany is also the cheapest place I think in all of Europe to go to the supermarket and buy food.
Really?
So, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and by far, and you got good quality, low prices. I can buy everything that I need for two people for a week, and it's going to cost me about $80 here. $80, so 70 euros, 75 euros.
For a week's worth of food?
Yeah,
Well, because I think I'm spending. Well, I spend about $100 a week on groceries, but lately my shopping cart's been getting smaller and smaller. I call it the Venezuela diet. So
yeah.
we'll see if it helps me lose some weight.
No, and that's true too. You can go. There's a pizzeria around here. It's not good pizza. From New York, I don't call it pizza. I call it flatbread.
Yeah.
Uh, you know. But on the other hand, if you want to eat a prepared meal cooked by someone else, a full-size pizza, it's still small by New York standards, but a full meal in a restaurant, if you will, you could do that for $5.
Wow, that's so
Seven and a
that's
half.
cheaper. That's cheaper than America in many ways. Because if I go eat out, not that I eat out that much, but if I go to the local fast food place, you're probably spending between $5 and $10 for a decent
Yeah.
meal.
Oh yeah. You can eat all 3 meals a day out in Germany, and if you include drinks that aren't water, you could still probably settle the score if you're being very economical. 30 euros a day. You could do that.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that's why like I'm cautious to kind of say everything is wrong and bad. Well, because compared to Switzerland, Switzerland is more like American style pricing on that. And theoretically, they're doing it right,
Right. Right.
right? Germany and the EU, they're all printing money to fund countries that are in debt and this and that. Well, so far it's working because we're still paying less than our neighbors who are.
Well, and I guess as long as that money's going out of country, if you're printing money and it's leaving the country, it's not going to inflate your local prices so much.
Yeah, yeah.
That'd be
I
a
mean,
better
that's also
conversation for Dad, but yeah.
it's also, of course, it translates to wages and salaries. You go to Switzerland and also to America, you're getting paid a lot more. You have to spend more of your salary to live and survive. But, you know, a lot of places in Germany, you're not making a lot of money. Um, really good jobs now in supermarkets give you 14 an hour, and that's like groundbreaking. Like the big supermarket chains are starting to do that as
Right.
minimum wage, but you can make less working in a much more advanced job.
Hmm. Well, I know here in Oklahoma, for example, they're offering huge salaries for working fast food. There's not enough fast food burger flippers, and
Yeah.
I think a buddy of mine was looking at getting a job at the local McDonald's. I think they're offering $18 an hour for anybody who knew how to cook. So, um, have you guys been seeing a lot of inflation in Germany? I know the inflation's been just ridiculous here in America.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to food products, flour and oil, also gas, yeah, it's pretty significant. But aside from that, I wouldn't say that. Oh, and cars too, because of trip storage. But aside from that, I wouldn't say that it's too significant.
Okay.
I'm just looking up right now because I'm curious how much airport workers get paid because they're in real demand. They have an extreme shortage, but I bet you it's pretty low.
And what about the energy concerns? There's talk about Europe having an energy crisis come wintertime, and they're trying to scare us with the food shortage. It's like, oh my God, there's going to be a food shortage next year because lack of fertilizer.
It's like the context of how the world is always ending. So this airport, extreme shortage of airport workers. Like they are canceling flights. I think it's the worst in Amsterdam, because I don't want to be racist, but things are kind of chaotic over there sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, but in Germany too, like Düsseldorf, Cologne, like the small airports, they're kind of screwed right now. Like it's a big problem, and it's affecting. Oh, computer phone is ringing.
Oops.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay.
There we go. But yeah, it's really like it's the sort of situation. If you have people, throw money at them and hire them, man, because you're going to lose way more money the other way around. And yet, the starting salary is like 12 an hour, and that was after they had a strike and they raised it. Um, you know, or the annual salary on translation like 26 grand a year. Don't expect me to get up in the morning and say I love my job and go and do it really efficiently if that's what I'm going to get.
Yeah.
And how about this? All these good workers they had that they fired because of Corona, you think that they're going to go back to work for that money just to risk getting fired again? No, they found good jobs in the meantime. And that's a really serious problem is this whole labor situation.
Yeah,
That causes a lot of follow-on issues.
Thanks for watching. I hope you liked the video. If you did like it, subscribe to my channel and share it with your friends. You can also check out my website, bobtheorc.com, where you can download a free copy of my dad's book and some other things. Have a nice day. Goodbye.